You are not who you were, and they don't get to keep that version of you. Sometimes people aren't angry because you've become worse. They're angry because you've become harder to control. You used to say yes when you meant no. You swallowed your disappointment to keep everyone comfortable. You forgave quickly. You explained yourself endlessly. You made yourself smaller so other people wouldn't have to make room for you. And then something changed. You began to notice how exhausted you were. You began to hear the difference between kindness and self-abandonment. You started saying no. You stopped chasing approval. You began choosing a life that actually belonged to you. And suddenly you were different. Of course you were. You were supposed to be. Psychology tells us that people often become attached to the roles we play in their lives. The helper, the peacemaker, the agreeable one, the person who always understands. When you step outside that role, some people experience your growth as a personal rejection. Not because you harmed them, but because your boundaries changed what they could expect from you. And this is where growth becomes painful, because you may begin to feel guilty for becoming healthier. You wonder, am I selfish now? Have I become cold? Why do people seem to love me less when I finally started loving myself properly? But sometimes you haven't become colder. You've simply stopped burning yourself to keep other people warm. And yes, some people will prefer the old version of you, the version who tolerated more, the version who questioned herself before questioning anyone else, the version who was always available. Let them miss that person. You don't have to resurrect an old version of yourself just because someone was comfortable with her. There is a quiet cruelty in remaining who you no longer are, simply to preserve someone else's image of you. Life asks us to change, to shed identities that once protected us, to become more honest about what we need, what we believe, and what we will no longer accept. And perhaps becoming yourself will disappoint people. That is not always evidence that you've done something wrong. Sometimes it is simply evidence that you have stopped living according to their expectations. You are allowed to outgrow the role you were given. You are allowed to become unfamiliar to people who only knew the version of you that made their lives easier. Because your life does not belong to the person they remember. It belongs to the person you are still becoming. And maybe the real question isn't whether everyone will understand your transformation. It's whether you are willing to keep transforming even when they don't.